righty. Well, good morning, everybody, and welcome to church. If you're glad to be here, let's hear a good amen. Amen. Well, let's all stand and grab our hymnals and turn to page 57, and we'll sing Amazing Grace.
But God did work. He came through last night. It was just we were actually talking, and it come up about Christmas time and gift giving. But first of all, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to Romans. Don't worry about turning that. It's going to be the one verse and that's it. Romans 6:23. For the wages of sin is death, but the gift of God is eternal life through Jesus Christ our Lord. So. You know, we were talking about it. I was thinking this is the gift-giving season, you know, that we're coming into right now. I thought, you know, what's a gift? A gift, it's something that somebody gives you. Usually they have to sacrifice something of themselves to give to you. So it's, you know, whether it be time, money, you know, some type of service or whatever. And then I remember Preacher Justin and the message about himself. You know, this kid was asking for his inheritance. The father wasn't dead yet. You know, so the father was giving him a gift, really, in all senses. And, you know, the inheritance, that's after someone's dead, that's the leftovers. That's what you leave behind, not something of yourself you have to give. So I thought about it, you know, if you're saved, a saved person, we've got an inheritance through Christ because someone had to die. But we also have a gift because it didn't stay dead. If you start, you know, the inheritance is left over, and the gift is something that's given now at the cost to the giver. It costs you something. If you start looking at God's gifts that He gives us, mercy, grace, mercy, not getting what we deserve, and then grace, you know, receiving what we don't deserve, and then the blessings of our daily provisions, everything, you know, answers prayers, you know, just His guiding hand, His protecting hand. So much stuff that we take for granted. And then the grace gift of all is Christ. So it just overlooking all of it, you know, gifts cost the giver, and inheritance is what's left over. But God gives us both inheritance through Christ and daily gifts through mercy, grace, blessings, and through His Son Jesus. So it's one of those things that's looked at. It says we shouldn't give, we should not just receive these gifts that God gives us, but we're supposed to be Christ-like. We shouldn't just receive those, take them, and go on. We should reflect those gifts that God has given us. And that way we'll reflect the personality of God. So that's about it. Just thankful, you know, that we've got that gift of eternal life. It's offered to us. It costs somebody. But it didn't cost us. Eric, you pray with me.
Lord, I do think what's a gift allowance to be in the house of God is more than Lord, I do think with our word of encouragement, Lord, I pray you help us, Lord. Strive thee with, Lord, help us, Lord, to listen to the word of God. I pray that you bless the teachers as they study the labor of God, that you bless the preaching, Lord. I pray everything we've done in decent order, help us not be ashamed of it. Stand strong in faith, Lord. Thank you, Jesus' name.
Morning, everyone. Y'all pray for my daughter. She's being mean to Chris. Even though he's an easy target, she's still being mean to him. Good to see everybody this morning. I had a good time last night doing the parade and drinking Jerica's extremely hot chocolate. She was real excited pouring that chocolate in there. So she made that evil laugh when she was putting it in there. But everything was good. It was very good. Yeah, it was good. Good time, fellowship. I'm glad to have my good friend Jay Earl with us. I'm gonna call him Brother Jay. We've gone back way back when third grade. I was actually mentioning it in the fellowship hall before Sunday school. He taught me a lot of stuff in school. Super Mario Brothers 3 with the raccoon, and he was a whiz at that game, and I remember all that. And we got to run around together quite a bit, and kind of split apart a little bit. But I'm glad that he's here. God's delivered him through a lot of things, and he's got a great testimony. I'm thankful to call him my brother. I'm glad to have you all here as well. We're going to continue on. Last week we went through a lot of things with the genealogy of Jesus, trying to get ready for the Christmas season. So this morning we're going to start talking about the only women that are mentioned in the genealogy of Jesus, and that's found in Matthew chapter number 1. We're not going to be in Matthew chapter 1, but it's found in Matthew chapter number 1. And I've got the verses up here on the screen, and it says in verse number 3, the first part of verse number 3 of Matthew 1, it says, "And Judas begat Phares and Zara of Thamar." That Thamar is actually also Tamar, right? Two different spellings. Tamar in the Old Testament, Thamar in the New Testament. Verse 5, it says, "And Salmon begat Boaz of Rachab," and that Rachab is actually Rahab as well. Hi, Rick. It's real easy for me to lose focus. But we'll talk about Rahab this morning as well, and that'll probably be as far as we get. But we also have Ruth at the end of verse number 5, the wife of Uriah at the end of verse number 6, and that's Bathsheba, and we'll talk about her here in a couple of weeks. And then, of course, Mary, who was the mother of Jesus, also the wife of Joseph. So, looking at these 5 women, Tamar, Rahab, Ruth, Bathsheba, and Mary, it's funny when we start looking at their backgrounds, where they came from, what their testimonies were. Many people, not just because they were women, but many people would have excluded them. All right, some people would have excluded them simply because they were women. But what I love is God includes the excluded. Because if we were honest with ourselves, everybody sitting here would be excluded by our standards. Okay, because there's always something we can find in and of ourselves and of other people that would say, "Man, why would God choose us? Why would God use us?" Those things of that nature. But it's interesting when looking at these women, there's also some men in this genealogy, and it's like, why would God use them too, right? So the first one is Abraham, all right? We kind of mentioned it this morning about, I was talking to Brother Dean and Brother Justin about lying, and we're going to talk about that briefly this morning as well too. But Abraham lied, okay? I don't know if y'all knew this. He married his sister, Sarah, not his full-blooded sister. It was his half-sister. His daddy married her mama, and I guess then they came together, right? So, and then we know that Abraham was trying to save his own hide, and he said, "Oh, well, this isn't my wife, this is my sister," which was true but not true type of thing, right? But we know he was a liar. Jacob, oh man, Jacob was really bad. All right, we don't have time to go into details about it, but he was a manipulator and he was a liar too. And then Judah, which is someone we're going to talk about this morning, who Tamar had a relationship with. Awful guy. He was a liar as well. Then Rehoboam, he actually is the reason why Judah and Israel split. Okay, so he was very divisive, not decisive. He was divisive. Sometimes division's good, but a lot of times we don't need to cause division. Okay, so just remember that. Jehoram, he was a murderer. In fact, he killed all 6 of his brothers so he could be king. That's in 2 Chronicles, if you want to look at that. Keeping with this theme, Manasseh, he was a sorcerer. He sacrificed his own son. All right, so he's in this genealogy. Amon, he served and worshipped idols. David, which we will not talk about this morning, but here in a couple of weeks. We know he was a man after God's own heart, but he was a coveter. He was an adulterer and a murderer. And how many wives did he have? I don't even remember. I think it was at least 3. He had children with each one of them, and that's a whole other thing as well. And then Solomon, David's son, he was an idolater. He had 700 wives and 300 concubines. And it's interesting, he's the wisest man to ever live, but did some of the most foolish things. Right? So to say, well, why would God include these women in Jesus' genealogy? I say, well, why would God include these men? Right? And if we were alive during biblical times, would God choose us to be in that, right? The thing is that He did choose us. He chose every one of us, right? The problem is that we don't choose Him, because He does give us that choice. And if we don't choose Him, we choose the world, choose the devil, choose sin, all those things. yeah, you can't have a part of Christ. Okay, so we're going to be in Genesis chapter 38. So if y'all turn your Bibles there, we're going to go through this entire chapter, if we can get through it. So back to Matthew chapter 1, verse 3, it tells us, and Judas begat Phares and Zerah of Thamar, and Phares begat Esrom, and Esrom begat Aram. Okay, so Judas is actually Judah, who we're getting ready to talk about. Judah was actually the fourth son of Jacob. Reuben, Simeon, Levi, then he had Judah. I do want to read this verse. This is not necessarily applicable to the time frame of Judah and Tamar, but it's going to be something we're going to reference later on. In Deuteronomy chapter 25, verses 5 and 6, the Bible says, if brethren dwell together, and one of them die and have no child, the wife of the dead shall not marry without unto a stranger. Her husband's brother shall go in unto her and take her to him to wife, and perform the duty of an husband's brother unto her. In other words, if I had a brother, all right, I'm an only child, but let's say I had a brother, and Beth and I were married, and I died. This is back in this time. This is not today time, okay? And I were to die, and we didn't have a child, it would be the responsibility of my brother to have a child with Beth. That way, that could carry on my name. All right, that's what this verse is saying. And then we get to verse 6. And it shall be that the firstborn which she beareth shall succeed in the name of his brother which is dead, that his name be not put out of Israel. Does that make sense to everyone? All right, so that way we can, but here's the thing. This is in Deuteronomy. This was written in the time of the children wandering in the wilderness, okay? Genesis 38 takes place before the Israelites were even in captivity in Egypt, okay? But this is what God's plan kind of was for the nation of Israel. All right, so that's just important to remember. So we're in Genesis chapter 38. Verse number 1 says, and it came to pass at that time that Judah, that's Jacob's fourth son, went down from his brethren and turned to a certain Adulamite whose name was Hira. So Hira was just his friend. He was just somebody that, and we're going to read later on, that Hira was a close friend of his because Judah's going to lose a child here later on. And he was just somebody that he can confide in, he could hang out with, of those natures. Verse 2, and Judah saw there, when he's with his friend, a daughter of a certain Canaanite whose name was Shua. And he took her and went in unto her, and she conceived and bare a son, and he called his name And she conceived again and bare a son, and she called his name Onan. And she yet again conceived and bare a son, and called his name Shelah. And he was at Chezib when she bare him. So we see that Judah went outside of the nation of Israel, went to a Canaanite, and had 3 different children. Okay, so Onan, and Shelah, and that's going to be important here in just a minute. Verse number 6. And Judah took a wife for his firstborn, whose name was Tamar. And Judah's firstborn, was wicked in the sight of the Lord, and the Lord slew him. So the Bible doesn't definitively tell us this, but given where Judah found his wife, her being a Canaanite, chances are Tamar was a Canaanite as well. Okay, so I want to lay that out there. And so then he picked out a wife for his firstborn, and was not doing good stuff, right? We already see his daddy went outside the nation of Israel to go get a wife instead of staying with his nation. And when he did that, then he said, hey, I want you to have this woman as your wife. And we're not given details as to what actually did, but the Bible just tells us that he did wicked things in the sight of the Lord, so God took him out. All right, so now Tamar is a widow, okay? And Judah said unto, this is verse number 8, and Judah said unto Onan, which was his second son, go in unto thy brother's wife, which goes back to what we just talked about in Deuteronomy chapter 25. We're in Genesis 38, for those of you who just walked in. Go in unto thy brother's wife, and marry her, and raise up seed to thy brother. And Onan knew that the seed should not be his in his own mind, right? He wanted to do his own thing. And it came to pass when he went in unto his brother's wife, right? He's having intercourse with his brother's wife, even though his brother's dead, that he spilled it on the ground, lest that he should give seed to his brother. And the thing which he did displeased the Lord, wherefore he slew him also. All right, so Judah told Onan, his second son, to marry Tamar, to have children with her, but Onan refused, and that displeased God, and so God slew Onan as well. 2 for 2, right? And Onan. So this was not a law, like I said, that God had put into place yet, but it was going to be something in the future. All right, verse number 11. Then said Judah to Tamar, his daughter-in-law, remain a widow at thy father's house till Shelah, my son, be grown. Shelah was the third child that Judah had. For he said, lest peradventure, for there's a chance that he die also, as his brethren did. And Tamar went and dwelt in her father's house. So we see here that Judah has made a promise to Tamar, said, look, I know the first two died, but I give you my word, you can have my third son when he gets older. So chances are he was quite young, so he's going to wait till he became a man and then give him to Tamar. All right, let's see if Judah keeps his word. Verse 12. And in process of time, the daughter of Shua, Judah's wife, died. So Judah had a daughter that we don't have a name for. Now she's died. He's lost 3 children now, right? And Judah was comforted and went up to the sheep shearers to Timnath, he and his friend Hira the Adullamite. So here, now that he's lost his daughter, he's sad. He goes back to his friend that we read about earlier on in this chapter to be comforted. All right, and Timnath's a really cool place too. Lots of different things happen in Timnath. I suggest y'all go look at that too. I got to try to stay on task because it's real easy for me to go off. Verse number 13. And it was told Tamar, saying, behold, thy father-in-law goeth up to Timnath to shear his sheep. And she put on her widow's garments off from her. So she was already wearing the widow's garments. She's twice widow, right? She's taken these off. And covered her with a veil, and wrapped herself, and sat in an open place, which is by the way to Timnath. For she saw that Shelah was grown, and she was not given unto him to wife. So even though Judah had promised this third son to her, Judah did not keep that promise. All right, and she knew that Judah wasn't going to keep that promise. I think we could think of all kinds of reasons why Judah didn't give him to her. Maybe he was afraid he was going to die too. I don't know. But the thing is that he lied. He made a vow, he made a promise, and he did not keep it. So we see that she took off her widow's garments and went to where Timnath was and covered herself with a veil. All right, so kind of hid herself, if you will, but she was in an open place out there in Timnath, which is important as well. Verse 15, so Judah actually sees her, but he's not going to know who she is because she's covered with the veil. But it says, and Judah saw her, he thought her to be an harlot or a prostitute because she had covered her face. And he turned unto her by the way and said, go to, I pray thee, let me come in unto thee, for he knew not that she was his daughter-in-law. And she said, what wilt thou give me that thou mayest come in unto me? Let me stop right there. In other words, he's making a bargain with a woman that he thinks is a harlot. And he's already married. All right, so we know that Judah's just doing all kinds of wicked things. His sons followed in his footsteps, okay? So he's sitting there bargaining with his daughter-in-law, but doesn't know it's Tamar, okay? And he said, verse 17, I will send thee a kid, or like a baby goat, from the flock. And she said, wilt thou give me a pledge till thou send it? In other words, will you give me something in the meantime until I get this payment that you're telling me you're going to give me? And he said, what pledge shall I give thee? And she said, thy signet, and thy bracelets, and thy staff that is in thine hand. And he gave it her, and came in unto her, and she conceived by him. So a signet, I don't know if we've talked about it in here in the past. A signet was kind of like a ring that had the seal of the family name, if you will. If you remember during the time when Daniel got cast into the den of lions, the king actually put his seal on that. That way it signified that, one, the king approved of this, but also if it broke, then they would know that if the king didn't do it, then somebody else broke the law. Okay, so that was what that signet was. So this was three identifiable things that Judah had: the signet, his bracelets, and his staff. And he gave it to her. And then we see that they had intercourse, and as a result of their intercourse, she got pregnant. Okay, I tell you all the time, we've got Maury Povich, Jerry Springer stories up in the Bible all the time. Okay, so yeah, people try to say that the Bible's boring, but no, you just get in there and read it. There's some interesting things. Verse 19, it says, "And she arose and went away and laid by her veil from her." So she took the veil off and then put on the garments of her widowhood. So now she went back to the way she was before she went to Timnath. Verse 20, "And Judah sent the kid," the little baby sheep, baby goat, whatever it was, "by the hand of his friend the Adullamite," which was Hira, right, his good friend that we read about previously, "to receive his pledge from the woman's hand, but he found her not." So here Hira goes to give this kid to the prostitute and get back the signet, the bracelets, and the staff, and guess what? She's not there. Okay, so now we see, verse 21, "Then he asked the men of that place, saying, Where is the harlot that was openly by the wayside? And they said, There was no harlot in this place. And so he returned to Judah and said, I cannot find her. And also of the men of the place said that there was no harlot in this place. And Judah said, Let her take it to her, lest we be shamed. Behold, I sent this kid, and now it's not found her." And they're basically just saying, well, I don't know what to do. I guess we'll just have to go on about her business because she's gone now, right? Verse 24, "And it came to pass about 3 months after that it was told Judah, saying, Tamar thy daughter-in-law hath played the harlot. And also, behold, she is with child by whoredom. And Judah said, Bring her forth and let her be burned." So he heard that Judah had played the role of a harlot, but he didn't know all the details about it. But when he heard that, he's like, well, I can't believe she did that. She was supposed to wait on my third son, but then she went out there and fooled around somebody else and got pregnant. Let's burn her for the sin that she committed. Okay, it's interesting how that works, how people like to cast those stones. Verse 25, "When she was brought forth, she sent to her father-in-law, saying, By the man who these are, am I with child?" So in other words, she's getting ready to tell Judah, the man who got me pregnant, I've got these things to signify who he is. Okay? And she said, "Discern, I pray thee, who are these? The signet, the bracelets, and the staff." So you imagine the shock on Judah's face, like, oh, uh-oh. Right? It's good to have evidence. Verse 26, "And Judah acknowledged them." Thankfully, he didn't make excuses, but he said, "She hath been more righteous than I, because that I gave her not to Shelah my son," that third son, "and he knew her again no more." So Judah did acknowledge that Tamar was doing something better than what he had, right? And we can go into details, or we can ask the questions, did she do the right thing? Is it always okay to lie? Or is it ever okay to lie? Is it always okay to lie? No, it's not always okay to lie. But what she did, but the Lord was pleased with what she did. Okay, so that's the other thing we've got to be careful about. We're real easy to point fingers and say, they had no business doing that. And really, we need to let God discern a lot of those things. Okay, but it's real easy to be judgmental. Yes, sir.
This comes from domino effect. It started with Judah having a friend in a place he should have never had a friend in the first place.
Right.
It never says that this friend was wicked, but it took Judah to a place that his eyes should have never been.
Right.
Same thing with David when he was on the roof. And he simply stayed home from battle and put his eyes in a place that should have never been. Saw something David had never seen if he just been in battle. Then we see the domino effect start happening here. Starts having children with a woman that's not even from his own nation. His sons start dying, and he's starting to figure out, well, what's the best answer? Or I should say, what's
So, no, to say that, domino effect, snowball effect, if Judah had kept his word, then she would have never been in Timnath. Right? So that's something that's really good. That's something to think about. A lot of times we'll say, well, I should be able to do whatever I want. My sin only affects me. Well, it doesn't. Right? It doesn't just hurt your family members and your friends and other people like that. But when you do the wrong thing, then it might have an influence on someone else doing the wrong thing, and then it just keeps going. And it works the other way around, right? Well, if you do something nice, you've heard the expression, pay it forward, right? Hey, do something nice. And you never know, no, I'm glad somebody did that for me, and then I'm going to pay it forward. But sin works the same way. They'll pay it forward as well, pay it forward. And so I agree with you. If Judah had just kept his word, and as weird as it is for us today to think about how this whole, this law, this commandment that God eventually gave the children of Israel, but it's what God's plan was. Okay, whether we agree with it, whether we understand it, it's what God's plan was. If he had just done that, this would have never happened. But that's what's so great about what we're getting into. God still can use bad things too. Doesn't make the bad things right, it just makes God right. Verse 27, and it came to pass in the time of her travail that, behold, twins were in her womb. Poor Judah. Not only did he get her pregnant, but now he's got two buns in the oven, if you will. And it came to pass when she travailed that the one put out his hand. There's so many, this is one of those things too. It's like when you start visualizing things that are happening, it's like, that's so weird. But here it is, that when she travailed, that the one put out his hand. So she is giving birth. All right? The one put out his hand, and the midwife took and bound upon his hand a scarlet thread, saying, this one came out first. All right? Hopefully y'all are visualizing that. You're welcome. Okay? And it came to pass as he drew back his hand. You imagine that midwife, what she was thinking, like, what just happened? All right? And he drew back his hand, that behold, his brother came out, and she said, how hast thou broken forth? This breach be upon thee. Therefore his name was called Pharez. And afterward came out his brother that had the scarlet thread upon his hand, and his name was called Zerah. So Tamar gave birth to twins, Pharez and Zerah, which gets us back to where we were at in Matthew chapter 1. So what's really interesting, this awful, I call it an awful story because it just sounds terrible, right? You got this woman who's lost two. She really lost one husband, and there was another one that was promised to her to give her a child, and he died too, and then she was with her father-in-law, which is all kinds of weird and creepy, and just all these things happening, right? But if we look back into Genesis chapter 49, Jacob tells Judah, he said, Judah is a lion's whelp. Whelp is not a word that we use a lot of times. When I looked it up, it means puppy, okay, or a baby animal, if you will, right? So a lion's puppy or a lion cub, if you will, from the prey. So Judah is a lion's cub from the prey, my son. Thou art gone up. He stooped down. He couched as a lion, and as an old lion, who shall rouse him up? So this is where we get what we have in Revelation 5:5. And one of the elders said unto me, weep not, behold, the Lion of the tribe of Judah, the root of David, hath prevailed to open the book and to loose the seven seals thereof. As weird and as creepy and all this sin that's going on, God still prevailed and used that to give us Jesus. Okay? It's just really great. And it's interesting that Matthew chapter 1, verse 2, it's just funny that Pharez was the one that got the cord, the scarlet thread, that's the word, all right? He was the second born, but it's just funny that he was the one that got the cord. In Matthew chapter 1, verse 2, it says, Abraham begat Isaac, and Isaac begat Jacob, and Jacob begat Judas and his brethren. And then later on in verse 6, Jesse begat David the king, and David begat Solomon out of her that had been the wife of Uriah. It's interesting that all these second-borns, they are getting a whole lot of stuff, because if you remember, Isaac was not Abraham's firstborn child. Ishmael was with Hagar. And then Jacob, he wasn't the firstborn. Esau was, which is a whole great thing. Justin and I have been talking about that. I can't remember where it's at in the New Testament. I'm going to get off on a tangent for a second. Are y'all familiar with the verse in the Bible where it said, Jacob have I loved, but Esau have I hated? Man, that's a tough verse, right, when you try to explain it to people. And so then you can start talking to a bunch of people that will believe in. Predestination is a thing, okay? Because the Bible teaches about predestination. But you have some people that say, well, certain people were predestined to go to heaven, and certain people were predestined to go to hell. And they'll use that verse to say, well, see, he predestinated, he loved Jacob, but he hated Esau. All right? And I'm going to turn this into a Christmas lesson real quick. The thing is that he wasn't just talking about Jacob as an individual and Esau as an individual. All right? Jacob's name got changed to what? I didn't hear you. I did hear you, but say it louder. Israel. All right? So Jacob or Israel is whom Jesus loved or who God loved. Did you know there was a whole other nation that came from Esau than what came from Jacob? All right, so you got Jacob who had Israel. Esau had the nation of Edom. And we're going to talk, I'll briefly talk about that here in just a second. And it's not even that God hated, all right, we use that word hate a lot of times, but he didn't hate the nation of Edom either. But that's what that verse is talking about. He's talking about, these are my chosen people, these are not my chosen people. And here's the other thing, that word hate. We use it a lot of times. Oh, I hate Brussels sprouts. Oh, I hate Fords or whatever. Right? I hate my job, whatever. You can think, but it's a word that we use to describe the like these emotions that we have. You got something, Chuck? Go ahead. That's it. Right. You're absolutely right. So I don't have the verse written down, but Jesus was telling his disciples, he said, if you hate not your father, and you hate not your mother, and hate not your wife, and hate not your children, you cannot be my disciple. That's it, right? So, that's exactly right.
When we're saying prefer too, when he said he preferred the Israelites, it wasn't meant that I'm going to take this bunch and I'm going to pet them and I'm going to baby them. No, he preferred them for a work. Right. That's a difference there too. A lot of times when we say, he preferred, why did he take care of them? He didn't. When you look through the history of Israel, Lord have mercy. It wasn't like it was just a bed of roses. They got the thorn more than they got the petal.
Yep.
And so it was for a work, not for just simply, I want to set them aside and everything's going to be hunky-dory for them. No, that's not what that meant.
Yeah, and that's exactly right. So if you look at the word predestinate and you look at the word elect, that's another word that a lot of people like to throw around. It's not that people are predestinated or elected to salvation. It's what they're predestinated and elected to after they're saved. All right, there's things that we're supposed to do after we're saved, and that's already been foreordained. All right, it's right there. This is what you're supposed to do when you're a child of God. All right, so hopefully that all makes sense. Well, okay, I didn't finish. Tie it all into Christmas. If you look into Matthew, no, I can't remember if it's Matthew, I think it's Matthew 3. When it's talking about when the wise men came from the east, and they go to Herod, and they say, where is he that is born king of the Jews? All right, so they're asking for somebody who's born from the nation of Israel because he is born of the Jewish descent. Does anyone know what nation Herod came from? He absolutely came from the nation of Edom, literally the nation that came from Esau. So Herod wasn't even fit to be king of Israel because he wasn't of Israel, he was of Edom. Isn't that funny how there was still that battle going on? It's like the Hatfields and McCoys type of thing, just going on all these years later. All right, there we tied it into Christmas. Judah and Judas was actually the fourth born. Remember I mentioned that, Reuben, Simeon, Levi, and then you got Solomon was born, I think he was 10th. I was trying to go through in Chronicles and looking, with David having all these wives and the way everything played out. Solomon wasn't even his firstborn. Right, so you got all these people in this genealogy, and they're not even the firstborn, okay? And then, I don't have this written down, now you got someone, if Tamar's a Canaanite, we talk about Jesus being born king of the Jews, but there's a couple of Canaanites, or non-Gentiles, right? Chuck was going to talk about it, and I wish you had, but that's okay. You can get it studied for later. But they weren't all of the nation of Israel, right? You talk about Ruth, right? Where was she from? Moab, right? And Moab wasn't of the nation of Israel. Where was Rahab from? I'm only asking because I'm running out of time. I don't have time to go through it right now. But we'll go through it here in a couple weeks. She was from Jericho, which was in Canaan. All right? There's a whole lot of great similarities here when we start looking at it. Yeah, I'm out of time. We got to stop. I was hoping to at least get through the second one, but I couldn't even get through the first one. Remember that. That's the first compliment Justin ever given. I've told some of y'all already what he said I looked like Wednesday night after I shaved. I won't put it on YouTube, Facebook for everybody to hear. But y'all pray for our pastor. No. I appreciate y'all. Love y'all. Tyler's going to be teaching for us next week because it's Youth Sunday. Love Brother Tyler. And as soon as I asked him, man, he just smiled. Of course, he was smiling when Justin made fun of me the other night too, so I don't know if I can trust Tyler's smile or not. But yeah, I'm excited to have Tyler teach, and then we'll pick back up on this here in a couple of weeks. We probably won't be finished before Christmas talking about these women, but that's okay. I've got to learn to slow down. Everybody tells me, you got to slow down. But I get excited. I want to give y'all everything that God's given me. So everybody good? Anybody got anything? Did I confuse anybody? Chris, can you still see the screen? Has Hannah been nicer to you? Yeah, well, that's all. If Hannah's being quiet, that's a miracle. That's a prayer.